the things that you have a number of questions in sort of the middle of chapter 3, which is for the participation exercises and also the challenge exercises, is the idea of a range. So I'm going to do the sort of classic question that people have kind of seen a lot before probably. And I won't do the entire thing, but I will just do it like this. Okay, so I'll say, example of checking against a range. Okay, so in 10-point grading scale, we know that 90 to 100 is an A. And 80 to 89 is a B, etc. Okay, so this is a situation that I was just talking about in the other video where if you have a 95, that's greater than 80, but it's also greater than 90, so you wouldn't want to give someone a B by accident. So I'm going to look at one way that I would do that. So let's say we'll do C out. Okay. For these problems, there's a couple of ways you can tackle this. So I'm going to say here, if num grade is greater than or equal to 90, actually, let me make this a little bit better. Okay. And I'll simply test this out as is. Okay, so let's say 95. The 95 is an A. Okay, fantastic, cool. So now what happens if I type, let's do a 80. A 80 is a blank. Okay, that's not great. So let's try something here for my testing. And just put a little, sort of check here so that letter grade will always have a value. It's not really a good idea to just sort of hope that your variable has a value. So if let's say 80, it's an unknown. Good. So when I'm testing my program, this is something you want to think about, not just how to write the program, but how to make sure what you've written is correctly. A situation I had many, many years ago, one of my first jobs, was telling my boss, well, I think the code's pretty good. Once I get it to compile, I'm probably going to be about done. And the look on his face was just extreme disappointment, as in you've said something profoundly stupid. Because you might write, 20 pages of code, and it might take you much longer to find all the bugs in it if you didn't find the bugs as you went than it would to just rewrite the code from scratch. So I always write just a few lines of code, maybe 5, 10 lines of code, run the program, make sure everything works, add a little more, and so forth. That's why I always go in this kind of iterative process. Because once you start seeing many, many errors, it just becomes almost impossible to untangle things. Okay. Let's go for a 99. Okay, that's an A. Fantastic. Okay, now let's go for an 85. 86 is fine. That's a B. Great. And now let's try a 79. Okay. So why would I do it this way if I'm talking about ranges? Well, we know, as I said here, anything from 90 to 100 and presumably higher is an A. So if I'm just making sure it's greater than or equal to 90, then it's going to be an A. And because I use an else, as I talked about in the previous assignment, well, if this is true, this will not happen. If, else, if, using that format, it'll only ever use one of those, which means if this one's false, then that means number grade is not greater than or equal to 80. But then it is greater than or equal to 80, which so it's B. So it's correct. It's between 80 and 90. So, another way you could write this is something kind of like this. You could say if number grade is greater than or equal to 80 and number grade is less than or equal to 90. All right. Now that's writing it as a range because I'm saying here now, what's with the ampersand? Well, that's an and. Okay, so I'm saying here if the grade is greater than or equal to 80, okay, and it is less than or equal to 90. So in this case, let's say the grade is 95. Well, yeah, it's greater than 80, so that's true. But this is not true. And the and means that both of them have to be true in order for this whole condition to be considered true. So in this case, this would work the same way as the other way I did it. However, that gets a little bit wordy, and so I'm going to change it back. So I'm just going to go back to here. You can kind of think of else as being, well, it's got to be one or the other. It's only ever going to run one of those. So at this point now, if I'm going to continue ranges, what I would do, of course, is to add, C and D and F and so forth. Now, in the book, it talks about, there's a question where it's like, well, what little league is this student going to be in? Are they greater than 8? Are they greater than 10? Are they greater than 12? Obviously a 12-year-old is greater than 10 years old, but you would want to put him in the 10th section. You want to put him in the 8th. And the next part that is covered in this challenge is the and, or, and not. And so I was going to talk about those a little bit. And or work pretty much the same way that they do in real life. If somebody says, if it rains today and you don't bring your umbrella, then you're going to get wet. Okay, if it doesn't rain, then I won't get wet. If I bring an umbrella, I won't get wet because either one of those is not true. And or is kind of the opposite of that. For an or, only one of them has to be true. And this originally comes from actual circuitry, and it's something that I kind of talk about in one of the later sections that I posted, which is sort of just nice to have, or maybe you might be interested in the reading.